Alright guys, we're back. So lots happened the past week. I just came back from a 3-day Twitter suspension. I'm sure you've also seen Logan Paul's wife all over Twitter with literally every single known celebrity in the south side of LA. And on top of that, we've seen Bitcoin go from 30,000 to 26,000. And that's what we're going to get into today. So those of you that are unfamiliar, Bitcoin is the first ever open source, decentralized, anonymous cryptocurrency that allows users to send transactions from one point to the other, completely untraced, anonymous. It's immutable, it's durable, it's transferable. Its characteristics are pretty much positive in every single aspect. And to have a more clear understanding of what it is, it was invented in 2009 by a pseudonym or a said group of people called Satoshi Nakamoto. So there's no CEO, there's nobody actually in control of this, there's no government controlling it. The network runs on computational software that runs all throughout the world on several thousands of computers that send nodes to one another that help create the blockchain and help it run its decentralized private network. So when it comes to Bitcoin and supply, there's only a set amount that will ever exist, 21 million to be exact. But with fiat currency like the US dollar, or any other currency, you can print endless amounts, as much as you want, any second of the day. So out of the 21 million Bitcoin that are ever going to exist, there's only a certain amount that's in circulation. And the miners that mine the Bitcoin actually give out certain rewards, which is currently 7.25 per mine block. And over 4 years, or every 4 years, let's say, there's the Bitcoin halving, which then cuts that reward in half. So the 7.25 in 2024 is the next one. We'll see that go to 3.25, and then so on, cut in half each 4 years. And so essentially what it does there is it cuts the supply down and increases the demand, which we actually don't see in any other currency. We don't see that in the dollar. We don't see that in anything that's actually backed by something with a finite value. So that's the difference there. And when you talk about cross-border payments, so you want to send, I don't know, just say you want to send $800 to somebody in Africa. Well, you have to then go through 6 or 7 intermediary parties, from state banks to local banks to international banks on both sides. And they could essentially take your money, they could lose it. They're held accountable for essentially the entire travel and the duration of time it takes for that to actually work. So when you have Bitcoin, you can send it anonymously, instantly. It's untraceable. There's no way that the government can control it or even know who sent it. It's completely a peer-to-peer anonymous system, so it's very difficult for the government to track. And they claim that over selling your Bitcoin, you have to pay a 30% tax on it. And there are ways of getting around it, but it's still very tricky for them to actually pinpoint who the sender and who the receiver was. But like I said, for example, you want to send money to Africa, it's going to take 7+ business days for that money to actually go through. But then you send Bitcoin, it immediately goes through. They've got control of it. And you got to think countries like Africa, like Argentina, where their currency is devaluing 7% a day. Not 7% a year, 7% a day. So it's losing that much value, so their life savings are essentially gone. They don't do anything about it and put it into a hardback commodity or an asset that's going to give them a longevity, it's going to give them stability over time. And that's something is Bitcoin. You can send it to them instantly, they'll be able to protect their life savings because their currency is defunct. It's broken, it's going to fail. All the fiat currencies are designed to fail. And that's why we need to be using these newer technologies that are much more efficient. The computational power and the energy used is so much less than what it would be on other platforms and using the traditional financial system and the Federal Reserve. But it's also, it's more immutable. It's able to be more sustainable over time because when you have the US dollar that's simply backed by the full faith and credit of the United States versus something that has a limited supply, it's fully based on the supply and demand. It's not manipulated, it's not controlled. There's no CEO, there's no board of directors, there's nobody manipulating any aspect of Bitcoin except the buyers and the sellers. So that seems like the most fair system if you ask me. The Federal Reserve does nothing but take your money, throw it somewhere else, not tell you where it goes. If you go to the bank right now and you got $7 million in your account and you ask them, can I have all my money? I need it. Can I have my money? They're going to say, no, we don't have it. And they're going to say anything over $10,000, maybe it's a little bit less. They're going to say, well, we need, whoa, what do you need all this money for? So I wasn't fully orange-pilled until about November of 2021 when we saw Bitcoin skyrocket to 69,000 a coin, and one of the craziest bull markets we've ever seen. And that finally got me sold that decentralized finance is definitely the way to go, and it's going to surpass the traditional Federal Reserve and the fractional reserve system because it's so much more efficient, it's better, it's quicker. It's what the people really want, it's what the people need. One of the most important aspects about Bitcoin is that it's secure, it's safe, and it's all in your control. The best way to store it is with a self-custody wallet. That's the biggest mistake people will make because they'll use an exchange. They'll say, oh, I've got $2,000 on Coinbase or Webull or Binance, or I really hope you didn't have anything on FTX because we all know you don't have that today. If you bought any Bitcoin or any crypto in general on FTX, because it doesn't exist anymore. So that's why you don't buy on the exchanges. That's why you buy a self-custody wallet, a Trezor, Nano Ledger. I mean, there's so many different types of decentralized wallets or self-custody wallets that you can use to essentially be your own bank. You have full control of it. When you upload your Bitcoin into this flash drive, that's basically what it is. It has a 24-word seed phrase that only you know and you have access to. So you design this, you don't really design, you use this already designed self-custody flash drive and you upload your Bitcoin to it, and the only way to access it is to have this 24-word seed phrase that you then created. The government doesn't know, the company doesn't know, no individual user knows. The only way that they can get that is if they knew that, and you would have to tell somebody. And that's why it's important to not tell anyone your seed phrase, because I mean, that's everything right there. That's essentially your own bank account. And it's also really important because if you don't have Bitcoin in your own self-custody flash drive, and let's just say that you have money in the bank account, well, the government can seize that. They can seize your house. They can pretty much seize anything that's tangible. And that even includes your physical hard drive wallet. But the thing is, they can seize it, and they're not going to be able to get into it if they don't have that 24-word seed phrase that I mentioned earlier. So without that, it's essentially just a useless flash drive, and only you know that. So that's what's really important about that. No government, no individual person can alter that, no matter how much power they have. It's the power and the decentralization and the sovereignty of being able to have your own individual self-custody flash drive that's really important, and it'll go a long way in financial freedom. So the people that sit here and bash Bitcoin and only say bad things about it are the ones that are uneducated. They either have a lot of fiat currency protected in the real world that they then can't put at risk, because once all that fiat and regular money flows into Bitcoin and the decentralized space, then those guys aren't going to be worth much. They're going to want some Bitcoin. So you have people like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, all these people who have millions of conventional dollars put away that would be at risk when decentralized finance takes over and has the full realm of the financial world. So that's extremely risky to people like that, and they're going to sit here and say, oh, it's controlled by Russia, it's controlled by China, Bitcoin isn't going to make it. Well, you got to think, because they have their own agenda at play. They've got their own money, they've got their own priorities. So why would they sit here and say, oh yeah, decentralized finance is a future, even if they're right, because they can't sell out, they're going to lose that. And that goes a long way with being tied into the government, having that level of corruption. You're not going to sell out to that because you're on the good boy team. But that's a different conversation. These people are going to want some Bitcoin once the Federal Reserve crashes, once all the regular financial institutions go down. They're going to say, yeah, I might want some of this. I might want some decentralized cryptocurrency or something that's going to literally give me a store of value when all my regular wealth has been disintegrated and is worth a fraction of pennies, because that's what's going to happen. I mean, you got to think about the US dollar and U.S. debt limit, for instance. I mean, they're most likely going to default on that debt, and when they default, China's going to take over because they have a large influence over information, food, agriculture, production. So they are pretty much going to take over America if that happens. China is actually anti-Bitcoin. So if they take control, they're going to to do everything they can to stop it, so China is actually anti-Bitcoin. What's pretty interesting is that 45% of the total network is in China of all the miners. And in 2022, they made it to where it's illegal to mine there. So literally think about that. Almost half the network of the computational software was then just not in use. Half the network just completely went out just like that. And Bitcoin didn't miss a beat. The price was completely stagnant. It didn't even crash. It literally maintained stability. Because you could destroy every single computer in the network but one, and it's still going to run. It's still going to have value. The only way that it could be taken down is if the power grid completely collapses. That's the only way that you're going to see it fail, realistically. Because we've gone so far into time to where it's past those levels of $1 million. It's past I want to say, like the speculative value. It's definitely starting to grow into an asset and a real commodity. And the SEC actually ruled Bitcoin as property, so you can sit here and ethically promote it and ethically talk about it. If this was Ethereum, if this was a conversation about some sort of altcoin, then this would be in violation of not only legal ethics, but just in general, talking about things that are securities you're not actually supposed to do. And I want to actually sit here and vouch for any of those other cryptos, and unless they're actually deemed as property, and at the very least have a set supply, because something like Ethereum, uncapped supply, Monero, uncapped supply, even the US dollar, any fiat currency, uncapped supply. So that just gives you complete opportunity to lose your funds and have it controlled by somebody else, whether it's a government, whether it's a CEO and board of directors. It's essentially the same thing. You're relying on that one person. Hell, if you even invest in the stock market, that's even more risky and manipulated, because you're sitting here investing in companies that are then controlled by BlackRock, the S&P 500, and all sorts of CPI indexes that literally manipulate the price of what the shareholder is going to receive. So it's really risky when it comes to things like that in the traditional financial world. So you have to understand that Bitcoin is the future of decentralized finance. It's the future of the world we live in today, because the regular institutions will not make it. They will fail with the debt limit, with all the money that they're printing, and very little outcomes that they're receiving from this. It's not going to make it. It might last another 10 to 20 years. And then real commodities, real assets, and real currencies like Bitcoin will be the things that thrive and will be the things to invest in. Not the stocks, not the 401ks, not any manipulated and controlled program asset or just some sort of fund that you're investing in. So it's really important to have self-custody, to have your own bank, essentially, is what it is when you have Bitcoin in your own custody, and not being so reliant on other people to do the work for you and hope that your investment or your 401k is going to be the reason that you can retire. Not because I took a risk myself and saw that there is a better way than doing it the traditional normal way. There was something created in 2008 that was the most perfect computational software and protocol that we've yet to see. It's one of the most actually astonishing inventions in human history, and it's definitely the most important one in the last 20 years of this century. So it's really important that you have some of this. I'm not saying go 100% on Bitcoin, but you definitely need to have some of it. It's important to stack as much as you can, because like I said, when the supply is cut in half every 4 years, well, it's going to be less and less attainable. So the only way Bitcoin would actually fail is if the power grid went out, like I said earlier. But the odds of that happening aren't extremely high. And if it does, we'll be in complete anarchy, and nothing will matter at that point. Money will essentially be valueless. It'll be just survival of the fittest. So yeah, I'm not going to mind betting on Bitcoin and essentially putting everything into it, because, I mean, if that fails, then the world's going to fail. So it's essentially, Bitcoin is the last hope, it's the last resort, or last frontier of really a stable society before things really hit the fan. And that's the biggest problem that the politicians won't even tell you. It all goes back to the financial world. It's all about the root of the problem, not where the flower, not where the plant is, but it's about the root. And the root of everything, racism, systemic tyranny, all this stuff is because of the financial system. That's where it goes back to. I mean, poverty, that's where the root of it is. And when you have something that you can't take control of the people and manipulate the people by printing them into slavery, what it is basically, because modern slaves are not in chains, they're in debt. And when you have all these debt slaves, you can get them to do whatever they want to because they need to eat. And they want to say, well, let's just print 40% of the US dollar like we've done in the last 2 years. It essentially bleeds out, you're bleeding the people out of their own currency and leading them into poverty. You're creating a wealth divide to where the 1% is going to continue to keep getting rich, and everybody else is going to continue to keep getting lower and lower in the poverty section. So that is going to be able to be stopped only if we can have a currency with a finite value, something that can't be manipulated and controlled by a central government. Because when they created the Federal Reserve, central bank, J.P. Morgan and the Rothschild family, they did this with the intent to take control and to lead us into this sort of slavery. It's modern slavery, it's the way you look at it. And Bitcoin is the only way out of that right now. It's the best way out of that because it is the most fair network in existence. And one of the most humanitarian things that people can do is actually take their Bitcoin to the grave. When you do that, you realize that you've made a real contribution to the network by knowing that you've gone to the grave with that set amount of Bitcoin, and you die with that seed phrase in your head, so you know you've made a real contribution to the network when you own a certain supply that no longer can be created again. So like, let's just say that there's 10 iPhones ever to exist, like hypothetically. There are only 10 of them ever. The price of one of those is going to be extremely high. And then you take away, let's just say there's only 5 of them left now. Then that price is going to double. It's going to go even higher and higher. So the same thing with Bitcoin. You cut the rewards in half, it's going to continue to go up and up and up. It's going to double, it's going to triple, quadruple over time. And the overall market cap is about $500 billion, so $500 billion, 10th largest asset in the entire world. People don't seem to realize that. It's actually past J.P. Morgan when it comes to total market cap. And this is something that has only been created for 16 years. 2009 was the first year it was issued. It hasn't been really mainstream until the last 4 years, let's say. And it really took off in 2021. We started to see advertisements. We started to see everything when it started booming. And the entire crypto economy really came out. We saw, obviously, FTX is a major failure. We saw stadiums created after it, Crypto.com Arena. That's still there as of now. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, it's all about decentralized finance. And when you think about it, the US dollar is the strongest currency in existence right now in the world. And that decreases 20% a year. It literally loses 20% of its value each year. So if you aren't making 20% of what you made the year before, then you're essentially losing value. Now let's just say that you break even for 5 years. You've lost 100% of your wealth. And you're gonna be like, oh, Kacee, where are you getting that? Where are you making this shit? Are you making this shit up? No. Inflation, what, 7%, 8% a year? But they don't take into account the printing of the dollar, which was 40% in the last 2 years. That's at least gonna take that number up to 20%, if not more. But you see how they can do this though. They can bleed the currency out and keep saying we're gonna pay it off, we're gonna keep adding to the debt. Because it's all a joke, it's a game. It's not backed by anything, it's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States and the full faith and credit of what other fiat currencies offer for their country. So you see that it's all a game. It's literally just a monopoly game. Like, that's what it is when it comes to money. But when you actually get a real asset, a real finite value, decentralized cryptocurrency, especially something like Bitcoin, you have control, and that's what the governments fear. If everybody said, oh, I'm going to buy Bitcoin, I'm going to put my money into something that's safe, well, a lot of the banks, the 401ks, the financial sector, they would collapse because that's all the money then flew into there. It completely flowed into something else. So that's the issue that they're going to face, and that's why they don't want to promote it. It's a threat to them. It's a threat to these institutions that have not done anything for the well-being of the people. They've done nothing but manipulate, abuse, and take advantage. And of course something that's decentralized, it's fair, it's anonymous, that's going to be a threat to these institutions. It needs to be centralized, it needs to be seen, it needs to be controlled. We need to know everything, every transaction. There's so many things wrong with that on so many levels, and the fact that people even gave into this and still do is beyond me. I mean, I literally don't use the bank unless I'm paying bills, and here soon I'm probably not even going to use the bank because there's so many other and better ways to accumulate real dollars and even Bitcoin in a way. You can actually get a crypto card And literally every purchase you make, you get 0.5% in Bitcoin back. That's what I do. And basically the only reason that you would really need to use a bank is if you actually want to get cash. I mean, and even a Bitcoin wallet, if you want to sell it, or even crypto wallet, you want to take it to a Bitcoin ATM, well, you can get cash from that as well. So essentially the bank and the Federal Reserve are going to go out of business when everybody realizes this. It's only a matter of time, and keep in mind, this started in 2009. Realistically here, I'll make a prediction. By 2025, we will see a high of $200,000 of Bitcoin. $200,000, that will be the high, that will be the peak of that year. By 2030, you're going to see at least $500,000 of Bitcoin, if not $1 million. The financial industry is going to be so screwed, they're going to be so far in debt, that it's going to collapse and all this money will flow into Bitcoin. It's only a matter of time. 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20. All I know is that over time it's going to be more and more scarce, and governments are going to have no way to manipulate it, no way to control it. And when their plans fail, and you can be free, autonomous, and the regular person figures this out, like I said, it's only a matter of time. It's going to collapse, and decentralization will win. That's how our country was founded. We weren't founded by monitoring everything. We weren't founded by taxation and any of this crap. We were founded on sovereign rights, individual rights, and just being able to trust one another. So it's 2023. The price today is $26,100. Now we're going to watch this years from now, and we're going to see how this plays out. I'm not going to say I told you so, but all I'm going to say is get a little bit now. Get at least some exposure, whether it's 0.01, 0.05, a whole one. Get some exposure now, and we'll talk 5 years from now. So we'll have some more interviews upcoming in the future, but until then, we'll see you next time.